A woman becomes truly powerful not when she controls others, but when she no longer needs to control anything to feel at peace. That is when her energy becomes magnetic. Pause for a moment. Think about what it means to walk into a room and bring calm instead of chaos, to hear a hurtful comment and not respond from the wound but from the wisdom, to let go of what doesn't nourish your spirit, not because you're cold but because you're clear. This kind of strength doesn't shout. It doesn't demand recognition. It simply is. The world often teaches women to be everything: loud, available, reactive, desirable. But the deeper truth is this: a smart woman becomes magnetic not through noise, but through her ability to remain centered when everything else is off balance. She does not shrink, nor does she seek approval. She returns to her breath. She returns to her boundaries. She returns to herself. There is a silent discipline that defines the strength of a woman who is self-aware. Not the kind of strength that pushes against the world with loud declarations, but the kind that holds its ground with quiet certainty. You can see it in her presence. She does not need to prove her worth or overextend her heart to be validated. She moves through the world with the understanding that her energy is not something to be scattered. It is to be guarded, directed, and honored. To guard your energy is to live intentionally. It means that you do not allow every passing emotion, every random conversation, or every chaotic person to find shelter inside your spirit, because not every connection is nourishment. Some are leaks. Some people are not offering companionship. They are feeding off your calm because they haven't cultivated their own. The moment you begin to treat your emotional presence like a sacred space, your life changes. Not at instantly, but steadily, like a tree growing quietly beneath the surface until one day it breaks through the soil with undeniable strength. One woman shared a story of how she used to enter every room trying to fix the emotional temperature. If someone was upset, she'd try to soothe them. If there was tension, she'd absorb it just to maintain harmony. Over time, she became exhausted, not because of the weight of life, but because of the weight of other people's unprocessed emotions. Her nervous system, she realized, was constantly in alert mode. She had mistaken sensitivity for responsibility. When she finally began to pull back, not with coldness, but with clarity, she noticed something profound. The world didn't collapse. People adjusted. Her peace returned, and she began to understand that real love does not require depletion. Neuroscience reveals something important here. Our brains are wired with mirror neurons, which cause us to reflect and absorb the emotional states of those around us. This means that who you spend time with is not just a social choice. It's a biological influence. If you are surrounded by people who operate from fear, anger, or neediness, your emotional system begins to mirror that frequency. But when you place yourself in environments of steadiness, kindness, and authenticity, your nervous system responds with regulation. That calm you feel around certain people isn't imaginary. It's a sign that their energy is safe for your spirit. So, guarding your energy isn't about isolation. It's about discernment. It's about knowing that you can still be compassionate without becoming a container for other people's chaos. That you can hold space for someone without losing your own. And that the highest form of love you can offer the world is a regulated, grounded, present version of yourself. This is especially important in relationships because many women have been conditioned to equate love with self-sacrifice. They think that proving loyalty means absorbing pain. But true intimacy begins where self-abandonment ends. If your presence in someone's life requires that you constantly ignore your intuition, silence your needs, or shrink your truth, then that relationship is not love. It is survival masquerading as connection. Guarding your energy also means not explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Not every conversation deserves your emotional investment. Not every argument needs your rebuttal. Sometimes silence is not avoidance. It is wisdom. One woman described how she used to explain herself to people who had already made up their minds. She would spend hours crafting texts, rehearsing phone calls, trying to win back their understanding. It left her drained and hollow. When she finally stopped chasing clarity from those who thrived on confusion, she reclaimed her dignity. Her energy was no longer scattered. It became focused, purposeful, and aligned with her values. This principle applies just as deeply to the digital spaces we inhabit. Social media is a powerful amplifier of energy. The content you consume, the people you follow, the messages you internalize, all of these shape your emotional atmosphere. If you constantly expose yourself to comparison, outrage, and distraction, you are training your mind to remain unsettled. But if you curate your intake, just like you curate your relationships, you create a digital sanctuary that supports your evolution. You do not owe your attention to anyone or anything that drains your light. There is an old proverb that says, "When you walk with the wise, you become wise, but when you walk with fools, you suffer harm." This isn't just moral teaching, it's emotional truth. Smart women recognize this. They know that it is not cruel to walk away from what harms your peace. It is sacred, because peace is not passive. Peace is an act of courage. It takes strength to choose softness in a world that rewards hardness. It takes maturity to say no, not just to others, but to your own old patterns that once kept you safe but no longer serve your becoming. Guarding your energy also means honoring the seasons of your life. You do not have to be accessible all the time. You are not here to be emotionally available to everyone. There will be seasons where you need to go inward, to recalibrate, to mourn, to rest. These are not empty seasons, they are preparation. The same way soil needs to lie fallow before it produces again. You too need to protect the seasons of stillness in your journey. A woman who respects her inner rhythm does not fear missing out. She knows that what is meant for her does not require burnout to receive. And so, the first rule is simple but profound. Guard your energy as you guard your heart. Because when your energy is clean, your life begins to reflect that clarity. The relationships that stay are the ones that feed your growth. The situations that leave reveal what was never meant to stay. And your own self, no longer fragmented, returns home to itself. There is another quiet rule that wise women live by: speak less, observe more. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they've learned that most truths are revealed in silence. Words are powerful, but not all are necessary. In the rush to be heard, to defend, to clarify, something is often lost: presence. Smart women do not waste their words trying to convince others of who they are. They know that character is revealed not through explanations, but through consistency. They trust in the power of silence because silence teaches you to see. It teaches you to read what is unspoken. In relationships, this becomes a superpower. While others are talking over each other, trying to be right, trying to win, the woman who observes can see what most miss: how someone reacts under pressure, how they speak about others, how they respond when their ego is challenged. She listens not just to words, but to tone, not just to promises, but to patterns. There is a deep spiritual clarity that emerges when you begin to value observation over reaction. You become less impulsive, more grounded. You realize that most people reveal everything you need to know if you're just patient enough to let them talk. A woman once said, "When I stopped trying to be understood, I started to understand." That's the transformation. When you become less reactive, the truth starts to surface. often quietly, like the first light of dawn. From a psychological standpoint, the ability to pause and observe is rooted in executive functioning. This is the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that allows us to manage impulse, regulate emotion, and make decisions aligned with long-term values. When you speak less and observe more, you activate this part of your brain. You create space between stimulus and response. And in that space lies your freedom. The freedom to choose who you want to be in that moment, rather than defaulting to old programming. Eastern philosophy speaks to this as well. The concept of Wu Wei, effortless action, teaches that observation is the foundation of wise movement. You do not need to force what is natural. When you are attuned to your environment, your intuition, your body, you begin to act from alignment, not urgency. You do not need to chase answers. You allow truth to reveal itself. In practical life, this might mean listening fully when someone speaks instead of formulating your response while they talk. It means watching how someone behaves when they think you're not paying attention. It means noticing your own triggers without judging them and asking, why did that make me feel defensive? What story am I telling myself right now? Observation also requires the discipline of stillness. And stillness is hard in a world that constantly pushes for noise, movement, reaction. But a woman rooted in stillness is not easy to manipulate. She's not quick to defend what she already knows to be true. She does not respond to provocation with panic. Instead, she leans back, listens, watches. She studies energy, not just words. And this is what gives her the edge, not power over others, but power within herself. In conflict, she chooses presence over performance. She can sit in discomfort without needing to dominate it. She lets silence do the heavy lifting. Because sometimes the most powerful statement is no statement at all. And the deepest form of strength is not saying everything. It's knowing what doesn't need to be said. This practice is not easy at first. If you've been conditioned to seek validation through conversation or to rescue relationships through over-communication, the silence can feel threatening. But over time, it becomes comforting. It becomes a sanctuary. Because when you speak less, you start to hear more within yourself and in others. You begin to notice who listens when you finally do speak. You start to see who respects your stillness rather than fills it with noise. A woman once told of how she tested this principle in dating. She decided she would no longer fill awkward silences with chatter. She would allow the man to lead the conversation, to reveal his values, to show his intentions. And what she found surprised her. Some men withdrew. They were uncomfortable with the lack of validation. Others leaned in, intrigued by her calm. But the most important result was not about the men, it was about her. She felt empowered. She felt in control of her space. She felt free. To speak less and observe more is not about silence for silence's sake. It is about creating space for awareness. And from that awareness comes wisdom. The kind that doesn't need to argue. The kind that doesn't need to explain. The kind that simply knows. And in knowing, becomes immovable. Because when you truly observe, not just with your eyes, but with your soul, you begin to see the truth about people, about situations, about yourself. And in that truth, there is power. Quiet, steady, unshakable power. The kind that doesn't need attention. Because it already has presence. There is a subtle transformation that takes place in a woman's life the moment she shifts from seeking to aligning. It doesn't happen all at once. It begins with a quiet awakening, often born out of exhaustion. The exhaustion of chasing people who don't see her, of trying to impress those who only value her when she's bending, of pouring effort into places where her presence is only acknowledged when it's convenient. And in that quiet turning point, she starts to ask herself a more powerful question. What if I stop chasing and start aligning? Alignment is different from ambition. It's not driven by the need to prove. It's rooted in clarity. You are no longer acting from the fear of being alone, but from the knowing that being alone is not the worst thing. Being disconnected from yourself is. Alignment means your choices begin to reflect your values, not your wounds. It means your yes is honest and your no is clear. You are no longer available for emotional transactions that cost you your peace. You stop responding out of fear and start moving from trust, not trust in others, but trust in your own path. Many women spend years chasing attention,